everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at the DRF Saturday Race of the Day. It's going off at the middle of the card on Saturday at Aqueduct. Race 5 is the Grade 2 Hill Prince Stakes, going the 1.125 distance on the inner turf course. And Craig, we've got a pretty nice group of 3-year-old turf horses for a Grade 2 stakes race.
Yeah, we sure did. It's getting that time of year where these opportunities are running out for racing against just their own age. So looks like some trainers want to take advantage of that. And it's also a pretty quality field, but we got, 9 entrants and a MTO. So good betting race as well.
Let's throw up the field for this Hill Prince. 9 runners entered for the turf. The number 10 Krupi is an MTO entrant who will only run if this race is rained off the turf, but we're hoping that's not the case with sunny weather predicted on Saturday in New York. Craig, we've got a heavy favorite on the morning line, the number 3 Integration. I said at even money. Just a horse who's done nothing wrong in 2 career starts, stepped off of a very impressive maiden win to win the Virginia Derby last time over Program Trading, who's considered to be one of the best horses in this division, so he's clearly the horse to beat.
He is. I have no disagreement with your morning line. He should be a strong favorite in here. He's won both of his races very impressively, has shown some versatility in those 2, so a deserving favorite.
Remember, you can head on over to the DRF Race of the Day event page to get free PPs for this race and handicap along with us as we go through the runners in this Hill Prince. Before we get to the contenders, though, Craig, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And it's a tough pace projector to read. I guess the number 7 Quality Chic could show some speed coming out of dirt races where he's been somewhat tactical, but he's not really a front runner. I have to imagine that the number 2 Laurel Valley is the most likely leader since at least he's shown some speed in prior turf races.
Yeah, especially based on his race 2 back, even though that was at a much longer distance. He said all red fractions. Last time when he didn't make the lead, it was in a race with a fast pace. So he would seem the most likely to me. But as you said, we do have a wild card with Quality Chic changing from dirt to turf. He's been on turf before and did show some early speed.
The number 3 Integration, that morning light favorite, he does get the late pace flag, indicating that he has the highest Timeform US late pace rating in this field. Let's go through these runners in post position order, beginning with the number 1, Freedom Trail. We'll take a look at his most recent race at Aqueduct, the Belmont at the Big A meet. This was an optional claiming race where he was facing older horses, and he closes pretty well to just miss here, going off at a big price, 10-1 on this day, just failing to catch Exact Estimate, a 4-year-old. And Craig, we saw Exact Estimate come back last week in the Artie Schiller Stakes at Aqueduct and finish a good second against a solid group of older rivals. So this feels like a legitimate performance that Freedom Trail is coming out of.
I think it was. He had shown some flashes early in his career. He started out winning his first 2 races, but it kind of leveled off. But still being just a 3-year-old, I'm willing to take that improvement last time out at face value. I think that 117 speed figure is legit. And as you say, Exact Estimate's good run coming out of there kind of verifies it.
He is a horse that ran very well over these Aqueduct turf courses as a 2-year-old and seemed to appreciate getting back to Aqueduct last time. Also drawn the rail in this race, and we should notice we're handicapping this turf stakes race. The rails are set to be expected to be set at 0 feet for Saturday, so no temporary rails in action at Aqueduct. The number 2 is Laurel Valley. He's the horse that I think we're projecting is going to lead this field early. He set a fast-paced 2-back going the 1 3/8 distance, cut back last time and wasn't able to make the lead there, but another honest pace that day. So you'd imagine as a long shot in this race, they're going to try to go forward from the inside and hope to get lucky.
I would think so. I mean, he's shown some ability. He doesn't quite have the speed figures that some others in this field have. So the race rating for this race is a 116. He's never quite hit that level, but speed is always dangerous, so I wouldn't want to rule him completely out.
The number 3 Integration is just way the horse to beat in this race off his prior 2 starts. He earned a strong Timeform US speed figure on debut, an impressive winner that day at Colonial by over 6 lengths, and showed that was no fluke in the Virginia Derby, stepping up against a much tougher field, beating the heavy favorite Program Trading fair and square. He just followed that rival into the stretch, peeled out, and ran right by him in the final eighth of a mile. This horse has a really strong finish to him, and once the rider gets him in gear, he just needs to keep finding more at the end of his races. Seems like a really strong finisher that's going to be tough to hold off in this race, Greg, but we'll see how much pace develops for him.
Yeah, that is the question. But in his debut, he was up close to a fairly quick pace. So I'm not sure he has to have a fast pace. As you note, I think that Virginia Derby was pretty strong. We haven't seen program trading since. But the third place finisher, Runaway Storm, it came back in the Bryan Station at Keeneland and upset at a huge price, running a nice speed figure that day. So the race seems legitimate.
The number 4 is Equitize. Let's take a look at his last race, his only race, all the way back in March at Tampa Bay Downs. And this horse is making an ambitious step up in class off this Tampa Bay maiden special weight race, now coming back 8 months later to try a graded stakes in just the second start of his career. But Craig, I think this sign of confidence has to be taken as a good sign for Chad Brown, because he's making a big move up from facing much weaker company this day, not earning a speed figure that's going to make him competitive here. But this horse has a big pedigree, and Chad Brown tends to send out some live runners to Tampa Bay Downs on debut.
He does. My only issue with him is it's been quite a while. As you said, we haven't seen him since back in March. That race wasn't the strongest. Horses coming out of it have just run okay, nothing special. Obviously, I would expect a much quicker speed figure than the 96 in this spot, but I would prefer this horse a lot more if he hadn't drawn into such a tough race for the class.
He does attract Irad Ortiz. That Chad Brown has a few runners in this race, and I think it's interesting that Irad does land on this one. He's a horse who had a bit of an awkward trip that day, got bumped or seemed to make an awkward move outside at around the 3/8 pole before staying on well. So he was green in that debut, so definitely has forward to go. And the fact that they're targeting this ambitious spot has to be taken as a good sign. I did look up some stats for Chad Brown in this situation as we take a look at a DRF formulator fact. It's not the biggest sample, but I think the fact that Chad Brown has done this 17 times in a very specific statistic does say something about what he's doing here. 3 for 17 with horses running the second start of their career after winning their debuts off a 6 to 12 month layoff. Notably, within this sample, he's 0 for 6 on the turf. Most of these horses not stepping up into graded stakes races like this one is. So you can look at it one of two ways. Either it's way too ambitious, or it's a very good sign that he's targeting this tough spot. Let's move on to another Chad Brown runner, the number 5, Faraday. We'll take a look at his last race at Kentucky Downs when he was a winner going the mile and 5/16 distance. So don't have to worry about stamina for this guy. He makes a big move down the center of the race course and is able to hold off a resurgent Hilliard at the end of this race. They had wanted to run this horse in the Jockey Club Derby about 3 weeks prior to this. That was going a mile and 3/8. That race got rained off the turf, so he'll be competing here instead on the cutback.
He's a tough one for me to judge. When you look at his time form USPPs, you see he's a horse who comes from well off the pace. He's gotten great setups in the last two, hasn't run as fast as some others in here. And as you noted, Irad Ortiz chose to ride a different horse for Chad Brown. But I also watched that last race and know it wasn't easy to do what he did at Kentucky Downs, closing on the outside when the rail was the favored place to be. So he's a bit of a tough call for me. He's the horse I'm normally going to be against, but I won't be surprised if he runs well.
The number 6 is Too Far East is West. He's a horse who I just think has to take a step forward. He's been winning impressively in his last couple of starts, but beating up on weaker company, winning a Saratoga maiden race before facing a relatively soft N1X allowance at Laurel last time. It's just a big step up in class for him.
It is, as you can see, he was 3 to 5 last time out. He was for a reason. It wasn't the strongest field. He was coming out of a win at Saratoga, but he's a horse who comes from off the pace, and there's some others who just seem to have much stronger closing kicks.
The number 7 is Quality Chic, a horse who has really come to hand recently on the dirt for trainer David Jacobson. He's run 3 nice races in a row, including a couple of victories, breaking his maiden finally in his 10th career start, 3 back, and then winning his N1X allowance condition just 2 starts later last time with a career best 112 time form US speed figure. I guess we'll have to see if he can translate that to turf, Craig. His one prior turf start was nothing to write home about.
No, it wasn't. But when I see a race like that, it doesn't show up in our PPs here. I like to see how he was running on dirt, and he ran a similar speed figure to what he'd been doing on dirt at the time, a 96. He's progressed as a 3-year-old, so maybe he could transfer and run a similar speed figure again, a 112, which would make him competitive.
The number 8 is I'm Very Busy. Let's take a look at his most recent start at Aqueduct when he was an impressive N1X allowance winner by over 4 lengths. Got a very good trip this day, saving ground around the turns, splitting rivals in upper stretch to come on and win. But he really pulls away from this field fairly impressively in the late stages. This was going a mile. He's going to try to stretch out to the mile and an eighth here, but at least he's got a nice foundation underneath him, Craig. It felt like he took a few starts to get back on track when he came off the layoff this summer at Saratoga, but seems like Chad Brown has him back in top form now.
He does, and I was actually impressed. It looks like an easy trip, but he was up close to a pretty quick pace. You can see all the fractions coded in red. I liked how he ran that day. He draws Manny Franco, who's very dangerous in these turf routes when you look up his stats. So I think I'm Very Busy is pretty dangerous in this spot.
And on the outside is the number 9, Classic Catch, who will be trying the turf for the first time. Definitely fits in this race from a quality standpoint because he's run some very competitive time form US speed figures on the dirt in his last couple of starts, winning that fast optional claimer 2 back in an off the turf race, and then finishing an unlucky second in that rained off the turf Jockey Club Derby last time when he stumbled at the start and couldn't quite get there. Once again, this horse has entered for the turf, Craig. I think they chose this spot over the Red Smith last week when he was drawn the far outside post position, just barely getting in from the AE list. But I think they elected for this spot instead, going the mile and an eighth distance. Todd Pletcher really wants to get this horse on the turf, and he did train well over it over the summer at Saratoga.
Yeah, we talked about this horse a few times in the preview of the Red Smith and on our Time Form US forecast. We both thought he was going to be dangerous against older horses, so no reason to think he won't be cutting back against just 3-year-olds.
Let's take a look at our picks for this Grade 2 Hill Prince. And Craig, we're going in slightly different directions here, though we have mostly the same horses in the mix. You put the number 3 Integration on top, and I have no argument. He is just very much the horse to beat in this race. I think you just have to decide how short a price you want to take on him.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be running to the window to bet him because he's going to be a short price, but I think he's very much the horse to beat. And I had trouble coming up with a horse I really wanted to latch onto to bet. It's a good deep field, but it just seems to me he's a head above the rest.
That might be the case. The number 1, Freedom Trail. I just thought he really showed some likable attributes, taking the blinkers off last time, traveling in the bridle under Jose Ortiz. And if he can work out the same kind of trip, but do so riding the rail, having drawn the inside post, I think that could be beneficial in this mile and an eighth event with the rails coming down this weekend at Aqueduct. So I put the number 1, Freedom Trail on top. Craig's got the number 3, Integration in the DRF Saturday race of the day, the Grade 2 Hill Prince. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.